everybody. Welcome back to Teen Talks. And we are here after a beautiful Labor Day weekend and ready to chat.
As always, as always. Yeah.
So,
Today we're going to be talking about three things. Three things. We're going to be talking about fear. We're going to talk about failure. And what's the third thing, Susan?
forgot.
Risk. Taking
Risk.
risks. Yeah. We're going to be talking
Old
about
brain.
fear, failure, and risk. So,
Mm.
what it is, why we have fear and how fear stops us in our lives. And then failure, how it's necessary to fail, but at the same time, we kind of don't want to fail because, failing kind of sucks sometimes. And then risk, taking risks, because in order to get whatever we want in life, sometimes we have to take that risk. And I'm sure that many
Mhm.
of you watching have experienced situations like that, and you know what that's like to take that risk,
Yeah,
to feel
for sure.
uneasy, and then to see what it's like on the other side at some point. So yeah, let's get straight into it.
Okay.
Um,
Failure.
Susan,
Mm.
yeah, Susan. So when talking about failure, what are when you were growing up, do you remember any moments in your life where you experienced that sort of failure? Maybe it was at school, like with exams or tests or things like that, or maybe you were striving to get something and you weren't able to achieve it. Like any situations like that for you?
I can't think of any, although I'm sure there were many.
Mm-hmm.
That was way back when there was lots of failure because I obviously ended up in the wrong crowd. So I didn't push to be in the right crowd,
Mm,
or I failed there. I failed myself.
mm,
And, but what I learned from it. So, um, as I've gotten older, I've had lots of times where I failed. Like you try to get a job and you don't get it, or um, you try to make as a teacher, right, an educator. I've tried to put together a curriculum and teach it to the kids, and then all of a sudden they're just like, nah, didn't work. It's like, oh, I didn't get them. Okay, that one didn't work. So go back to the drawing board, or I failed my getting my driver's license because I didn't know how to parallel park. Guess
mm.
what? My dad made me parallel park like 29 times to get it right, and I am the best parallel parker now ever. So
Look at that.
failure, failure happens, and you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as, oh, I failed, I'm terrible, or wait a minute, what did I just learn from that? Well, I'm the best parallel parker now because I failed.
Yeah.
Um, my curriculum writing is way better because I failed, found out what doesn't work, so there's that.
Yeah. And I feel like, there are two sides to it, like you just said. Failing is one of those things that we almost don't want to experience because of how it feels to fail, how it can impact your life. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, it is one of those things that is necessary. You need to fail so that you can learn, so that you can grow and come back stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know that, at least from my experience, like interacting with parents and what they've said, is that a lot of the times they want their kids to take the safe route because there's a
Yeah.
less likelihood of them failing and there's a higher chance of them succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what you think about that because again, there are two sides to it. There's taking that safe route, right, and having that path that's almost like drawn out and very low risk,
Yeah.
or there's a high risk route that has a higher chance of failure, but maybe that route is going to shape them into a human being that's stronger, right? So I want to hear
Exactly.
what you have to say about that.
I think from a parenting point of view, when you bring up parenting and failure, parents want their kids to be happy. They want them to succeed, all of those things.
Yeah.
And rightly so, obviously. But I've seen, especially as an educator, I've seen parents who rescue,
Mm,
rescue them when they didn't get it right, or I'm going to help them with this project because they're not doing it right or whatever. Don't want them to fail. one typical thing is, and very small, but I'm sure some of the parents out there are going to know what I'm talking about, is I had my daughter kept forgetting her lunch, so I would, or her homework or whatever. And so I'd drive up to the school and go to the office and say, here's my daughter's lunch, or here's my daughter's homework, or, whatever. And eventually the secretary at the office said to me, stop bringing her stuff.
Mm,
She forgot it. And then they're like, well, she's not learning, is she? Because you keep bringing it to her.
yeah.
So that's almost like the tip of the helicopter parent, where you're in there, you're just zooming, gonna make
Mm,
sure that everything's working for them, and if they can't make it work, I'm gonna do it for them.
yeah.
um when I was doing that every time, she never learned. Once I stopped bringing it, oh, eventually she had to struggle. She wasn't going to starve,
Yeah.
you know. Um, One of the things about when you're parenting your kids is to think, if they never fail, they're never going to learn,
Mm,
right? If you're always doing everything for them, when you're not there, they're not going to feel capable enough to handle it,
yeah.
right? Because you're not going to be there all the time, right? When they're babies, you're going to have to do things. But as they
Yeah.
get older and older and older, you've got to let go and let them learn. Because when they learn the things that aren't going to kill them, that aren't dangerous when they're younger, they're going to be so much stronger. Of course, you're going to
Mm,
come in if something's going to be harmful.
yeah.
But, you know, failure is a great thing, actually.
Yeah. And
And that's how we
surprising,
learn.
and yeah, exactly. And surprisingly enough, I think there's a misconception because I think many teens actually do feel like they want to experience things on their own as well. Like there are many teens out there who are okay like failing. They're okay stepping into it on their own and experiencing it on their own, knowing that they'll fail. And I actually just made a video on this that I posted on social media about the surfer's mentality, about the whole idea of, you know, surfers when they go out into the water and they ride a wave, they ride that wave knowing that at some point that wave is going to crash down, that they can tumble, that they could get hurt, they'll lose their board, who knows, whatever happens, happens. But they're okay taking that risk and riding that wave because of the pleasure and the enjoyment of surfing, right? They enjoy surfing.
Right.
And they also know that there are going to be other waves to ride. So it's not just this one wave that's going to come and then that's it. They know that there are more opportunities. So I think that failure is one of those things where it shapes you. It shapes you.
Mhm.
And I do think that when teenagers are teenagers, they kind of want to get their independence. They want to figure things out on their own. They want to explore. They want to try new things. And sometimes it's, first of all, it's great to guide them. They need guidance. That's 100% sure. But sometimes it's also good to just kind of let go and let them experience things for themselves and
Mhm.
figure out for themselves whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, whether it's going to help them or not help them, whether, it's something that's going to bring them down or pick them up. And
Yeah.
they'll only know once they try it, once they experience it, because that's when they'll understand it. That's when they'll realize, oh, okay, this is good for me, or okay, this is not good for me.
Yeah, we all learn by consequences. And so the
Yeah.
natural consequences, that is where you learn.
Yeah.
The natural consequences, good and bad.
Hmm.
The consequences of success,
Yeah.
consequences of failure, and how you take that and
Hmm.
use it to make you better. So, yeah. So then
Exactly.
that brings us into fear.
Yeah.
So,
Because
fear.
fear is another one of those things, but fear is what stops us from even taking the action, right? We kind of relayed into risk as well previously when we're talking about failure, because I think they kind of do go hand in hand. And maybe
Mhm.
we can try and mix them all together. But if you're, from a teenager's perspective at least, a lot of the things that we do not do is based off of fear. And I think that's the same for adults, right? We our inaction is because of the fear that we have, fear of the unknown, fear of, what might happen. And that's another thing where that fear can develop over time, and it's rooted in a lot of lack of trust in oneself. And it's rooted in so many other things as well. And my question for you, Susan, is how could parents help their teens when it comes to dealing with this fear or overcoming that fear and that those limiting beliefs? That's a term that we use quite often. How can parents help teenagers with that? Because it is something that's so important so that teenagers can live life to the fullest.
Right. So fear, fear is good. We have fear. I mean, our bodies are made that way. The fight or flight, the amygdala gets, but we don't have animals coming after us like we had to, or we don't have to fight for our food and all that kind of stuff. So it's different now. And fear is most likely in your head. Okay. So my son had huge anxiety in high school. Anxiety is a form of fear because it's all in your head and you're going, there's something you're afraid of, right? But it's in your head. So if you allow yourself to dip your toes into the fear, you realize it's not so bad. I mean, this is really dumb, but I have my whole life have been afraid of jumping into cold water. Not even really cold water, but any like lukewarm even. And my coach used to have to chase me on the swim team every morning and push me in the pool so I could get into the cold water. I still deal with that now. And it's so dumb because once you're in, it's fine. So it's like allowing yourself to go, yes, I'm afraid, but what's going to happen? What's the worst thing that's going to happen to me? Better to look at it as what's the best thing that could happen, right? I jump into that pool. Oh my gosh, it's a little shock of cold. And then all of a sudden you warm up and I'm having a blast, right? What is the best thing that can happen? And it's usually pretty darn good, right? I was just listening to a podcast earlier and she said one of the things that you should do every day is do something that scares you. And that's how you grow. So
there seems to
my
be
son with his anxiety, what we had to do was one step at a time, dip your toe in. Let's try this. Did anything bad happen? No. Dip it in further and just a little at a time. Okay. When I was teaching public speaking, I had some kids occasionally so fearful to get up and speak that they just couldn't do it. They literally shut down and couldn't do it. So we had to take baby steps. So maybe they're in a group of 3 kids and they say a few things and realize it didn't hurt them. Nothing bad happened. Then we increase the size of the group and the length of time they speak gradually. And I can tell you that 99% of all those kids got up in front of a huge group and did their speech. And they loved it. Because it wasn't scary. It was the best thing ever, right? What was the best thing that could happen? They got people to listen to them and hear what they had to say. So when your child is dealing with fear, bit by bit, get them to face it, and allow them. And you might have to push them just a little bit. But if we sit there and if we live in fear, then nothing's ever going to happen. Nothing will happen. You'll never grow.
And that seems to be the common denominator with these 3 things: risk, fear, and failure. All 3 allow for us to grow. So if we're limiting, if teens are limited because we're scared of them failing, right? If teens are limited because they have fear of their own, and if teens are also limited because they're not willing to take risks, or they're not being put into an environment where they can take risks and feel that they're able to take risks, and how is that impacting their growth, right? And I think risk is a perfect way to kind of just finish all of this off, because if we think about it, anyone who ever takes any risk, right, always, without a shadow of a doubt, always comes out with either some sort of learning or some form of success, right? And the only 2 things well, the only thing I would say that stops people from taking risk is a fear of failure,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's almost like if we're able to shift that mindset and shift it in such a way where there is no such thing as failure, there's always a learning, there's always growth, but there's no failure, then I think that's where everything changes.
Yep.
Because then you have nothing to lose. You have
Right.
absolutely nothing to lose. And that
Yes.
removes the fear, it removes the possibility of failure, and it allows you to take that risk.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And I think
So
it's
being able
huge.
to face fear, failure, and risk, and being able to get through that gives you power. I mean, that's power right there. It's personal power. It
Exactly.
it gives you the strength to try anything, to not let it stop you. Um, I mean, this happens with adults all the time too.
Hmm.
But can you imagine if you're a teenager and you give your child this skill,
Yeah.
this mindset switch, it's going to change their whole life. They're going to grow so much faster, and they're going to go the way they want to go faster, and feel strength from it.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for today's episode is to whenever you're making decisions, if you're making decisions for them or with them, or if you're giving them advice, or if you're trying to guide them in any way, just think about those three things, right? Have those keep those three things in mind because you know we know now that yes, failure sometimes is necessary, right? Because failure
Mm-hmm.
leads to learning and it leads to growing. It also means that taking that risk, on the other side of taking that risk is always something beautiful because either there's some learning that's happening, or they've achieved something new, they've taken that risk, they've experienced something new, they've gone on an adventure, they've done something. And ultimately that fear, right, then goes away. So it's almost like how can you help them overcome that fear so that they can take that risk,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the biggest takeaway for today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let them fail. Let
exactly.
them fail. Push them when they are fearful in little ways.
Yeah,
Right? And when they want to take a risk, if they want to take a risk, don't stop them unless it's going to be deadly. Let them do it. Just take your hands off and go for
yeah,
it. You
yeah.
know?
It's this interesting cycle where it's almost like if parents remove their fear from the situation, they're not afraid of the
Mhm.
outcome. They let their teen take that risk.
Yeah.
The teen might fail, right? But the teen might no longer have that fear of failure anymore because they'll see what it's like to fail, which actually is learning, growing, and
Yeah.
experiencing something new.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Give them their power.
exactly.
Give them their power.
Yeah. Alrighty.
So, all right. Well, go let them fail.
Yeah.
Let
Let them fail.
them fail. It's okay.
Yeah.
And once they do, come alongside and maybe ask, hey, what did you learn from that? How did it go? Or just be empathetic as far as, their feelings and everything, but continue to not get sucked up into being, oh, I'll take care of it. Just be
Yeah.
empathetic, come alongside. As we've said many times, it's like the guardrails on the bowling alley. You
Yeah.
are guiding them to do it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Just be there to support them throughout the whole
Yeah.
entire process, right?
Mhm. Yep.
That's the ultimate position to have when it comes to them and
Yeah.
who they are, right? Just be there to support them. That's what they need
Yes.
ultimately.
Right. Yep.
All
Takes
right.
a village. You got this, though. You
Yeah.
got this.
Take care,
And
everyone.
we'll
We'll
see
see
you
you
next
next
week.
week.
Okay.
All right.
Ciao.
Feel free to like, subscribe, comment, ask us questions if you want to. You can also reach out to us on Instagram, email us, do all that snazzy jazz stuff. And yeah,
We
thank you
actually
for
would
joining
love to
us.
hear what you thought of this discussion, if you agree with us too. You put that in
Yeah,
the comments. That would be really interesting to see
yeah.
what you guys have to say.
Feel free to even start a debate down there, and we'll see what people think. That'll be cool. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Bye.